Hello everyone, and welcome back to the set here at Plane Time. We're in Orlando, Florida, and I tell you what, this is going to be just a dynamic show for it. We have folks here for Radial engines, and I think we're going to start right from the beginning, and we're going to roll a video, and we're going to talk over the video. Some people don't know what a radial engine is. We have repair station folks here, and we're going to be watching this video right now, I think. Kind of like Richard Porter. And can we hear that? Is that going live? The sound of a radial engine. Oh. Excellent. Richard, I'm going to blow your cover. You're here with us right now. Tell us a little bit about that engine that's running right here.
That is the first start, the Pratt Whitney R-985 AM3. It had not been overhauled in over 20 years. And we just finished a major overhaul on it. It was his first start up at the test stop.
And this was actually out of your box there, out of your repair station.
Right.
And now we're going to go right back into it. Richard, welcome to Plane Time.
Thank you.
Michael, Jannine, welcome to Plane Time, and we're going to introduce these guys of what their role is. And Richard actually comes from a family of aviation, and Michael actually grew up as a air traffic controller in the military.
Yes.
Right out of the womb, he was an air traffic controller.
Oh yeah.
But Richard, tell us about Porter's Radials, and you got your start in aviation the hard way. You grew up in it.
Yeah.
Your dad had something to do with it. Bob, and thank you. Bob, if you're watching this, thanks so much for sending us this guy, because he's going to be the your legacy. But tell us a little bit about the Porter name.
Well, my parents were in the FBO business when I was born in Ottumwa, Iowa. We moved to Florida in 1965, and we tried everything we could to make a living in aviation. There's very little my dad hadn't tried. But the most successful part was engine overhauls, and that started when I was in my junior high school years. So I started working in the shop part-time at 13, full-time by 15, and I've been in it ever since.
How's your work ethic, Richard?
I'm anal. I'm very picky about it. That's why I get a lot of the work that I'm getting, and that's why I'm enjoying it. I'm kind of burnt out on flat engines. 3,500 of them was enough. But the radials are a lot of fun and require a lot of attention.
Well, and Richard, you just were awarded, actually granted, given, excelled at your repair station. And to do that, you had to apply to the FAA, and you had to show the FAA that you met at least the minimum standards that I'm sure you will exceed in many parts. But how were you able to do that? I mean, you did it all by yourself, didn't you?
No. I'm not sure that you can do it all by yourself anymore. It's just as an A&P and IA. Luckily, I had Michael's help, and that's his background, his paperwork pusher, and he did a great job of it.
And that would be Michael Jannine?
That's Michael Jannine.
And he is your compliance manager?
He is our compliance manager.
And Michael, tell us a little bit about what your responsibilities are to keep Richard on the straight and narrow so he keeps that repair station license.
Well, it's an initial requirement plus the annual requirement for the regulations, the manuals, and the training, and all components of training and the shop safety.
How about if you find something that comes in one of your engines that is just wrong? Do you have an avenue to get that into the system for all the other maybe R-985s that are going to be?
Yeah, the FAA has a form called the Surface Difficulty Report that you're required to fill out if you find something that's excessively invalid.
It's wrong.
It's wrong.
It's just wrong. And one thing in common, if you've noticed anything really in common, we're old. And is there a next generation, Richard, that you're trying to work on to? Because these engines are old, but they're going to be around a lot longer. They were here before we came in. They're going to be here after we leave. So how are we going to keep these old engines operating safely?
That's what we're looking for. One of the problems we have is we have restored a lot of equipment, rebuilt a lot of things, and I'm pretty sure it's going to outlive me. These engines have been around for over 75 years the way they are, and we're looking for people that are interested, and A&P schools are going to be probably the source.
And Richard, as we talk, the guys are going to, gals are going to drop in some photographs from your repair station, just ad hoc, just whichever it looks interesting. And if something really pops up on the screen that you notice that you want to bring light to, let's talk about it. But you mentioned that your shop, you just started this up in Ocala. It's at Leeward Air Ranch, and it takes a lot of work and effort to put together some of these masterpieces, and they are masterpieces.
Well, they're more of a restoration than just an overhaul, for sure. And we only work to new limits. Luckily, with the Pratt Whitney 985 series, parts availability is still incredibly good. We don't have to sacrifice on parts. We're able to get everything we need. And what has run out, they're making no PMAs now. So parts availability has been pretty good for them.
So these are 985s, and this is something that maybe Mr. Jannine can answer. 985, you being the compliance manager, what differentiates a 985? Is there a 980? What is a 990? What's 985 stand for?
The 985 stands for, in the Pratt Whitney R-985, 985 stands for cubic inches of displacement. For anybody who's in school or going to school for engines, they know what cubic inches of displacement are. An average car engine now is about 250 cubic inches, but they call it 2.5 liters.
So, and how much horsepower does this engine generally produce if it's running up to par?
450. It's a 450 horse engine, 9 cylinders. The R in the 985 is for the radial.
Okay, and this 450, is this at a certain power setting, certain RPM, or what? Where does it bring up that 450 horsepower?
It brings up to 450 at the max certificated RPM setting, and that would be 2350 RPMs. 2350
RPM, and these aircraft engines, what aircraft would you normally find these engines installed in?
They're predominantly manufactured for the World War II warbird training aircraft engines. And now they're used on those aircraft, and additionally on some civil aviation aircraft. Cessna made a few, Howard made a few, Stinson made a few. These are all the old aircraft from the 40s and the 50s and some in the 60s. Were still manufactured with these engines.
And what you say, the 40s and the 50s and 60s, probably when we get up into the 2040s and 2050s, are these engines still going to be around?
Oh yes, the technology was originally started in the 20s, in the 1920s. And these engines were built up until the late 1950s. And the technology and the process for these engines are still valid today. One technology that was developed for the 985 was called, back then it was called metallizing. Today we know that process as additive manufacturing. Still in use today in a lot of other industries besides aviation.
Interesting. I tell you what, Richard, you're very, very passionate about next generation. Every time we talk, it always comes up about youth. What can you do at Porter's Radials to kind of stimulate, if people have never heard a radial engine run, it either turns you on from the beginning or it turns you off from the beginning. What's the big deal?
Yeah, it's something either you get it in your blood or you don't. I did it at a very young age. We had a fleet of airplanes that had these engines on them, so that's what I kind of grew up with. But what we're trying to do is we're going to be open for tours and an experience. We're going to welcome people from A&P schools or anybody else who's interested, or anybody, and it doesn't have to be a child either. It could be anybody that wants to come see the shop. That, we're always available to tour and let people see it. And we're hoping, though, to start working with, once this COVID is over with, we're hoping we'll be able to start working with other schools or possibly groups that will start bringing people in that we could share the experience with. And from that, hopefully there'll be some people that would like to learn more, maybe serve an apprenticeship. We're open to whatever it takes.
Yeah, and I noticed you talking earlier today with the director of the Central Florida Aerospace Academy. And it's so interesting to find the cross-pollination between a repair station, a recently certificated repair station for, I'm going to use the term legacy engines, or they're no longer in production new, but they're in restoration at your shop. And some of the new education facilities, the high schools. And I think that there was a lot of synergy going on there between, actually, the director learned a lot from you, and I think you learned a lot from the director about what she has going on there.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And back when I was a kid, we didn't have those opportunities. And I think what Sun and Fun has done to help sponsor that school and everybody that's working in that is amazing.
Well, and from a compliance, let me bounce over to our compliance manager here. Michael, that's probably the most difficult task, is to keep Richard able to do what he's doing and not to have to keep his eye on the ball as far as all the regulatory changes, the requirements, the needs, the maintenance manual, and actually the repair station manual. Keeping it up to snuff is your responsibility. It's your baby.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of experience with that, but it's keeping up with the changes, because the FAA always has changes in rules and regulations and policy. But it's also trying to look forward to how we can better get the younger generation interested in aviation and aircraft maintenance and engine rebuilding. That's kind of been one of the focuses of the shop since the start. So,
well, I just noticed that fly go right on your nose there.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead and knock it off. Did I tell you we're live? And we do have insects in it.
this is Florida. This is Florida.
Florida? Oh, that's classic. And again, talking about the FAA and what sometimes the FAA gets a really bad rap for being difficult and hard and so forth, but actually the FAA, their role is there actually to help guide the operators, and I think we're seeing a lot more cooperation, and you dealing primarily with the FAA, and their job there is just to ensure that you're meeting the minimum requirements and to help navigate your way through these regulations. Have you had any problems, or has it been pretty smooth?
It's been pretty smooth. The whole repair station process nowadays with the FAA is online through their web portal, called the Safety Assurance System. And we were required to do the application online and through their new system. And it's worked out pretty well for the most part to this point. We haven't had any real issues, and they've been our current inspector has been most helpful.
And I know, guys, that it's very, very difficult to make something that's so routine in our industry as a radial engine, but make it exciting for young folks. But how would you like to steer us, as we're going to kind of ad lib here quite a bit, on what Richard has done, what he's learned, his skydiving pilotage, if you will, taking folks up for a one-way up and landing solo. Tell us a little bit about your experience there, Richard. And actually, before we started this show, I learned a lot that why he has so much passion as far as operating these engines. And I hope that we have folks that are in a similar, have similar abilities that you had to take folks up in these aircraft. How much time do you have behind a radial engine?
About 3,000 hours, I guess. About 2,000 hours of DC-3 time, another 1,000 hours in the 195 with a 450 on it. But also, my first airplane ride that I remember taking was with my family. I was probably 6 years old. It was in Ottumwa, Iowa, before we moved to Florida. And it was in a Ford Trimotor. And I was able to sit behind my dad when he was flying the airplane and look out the window and stare at that engine. And I thought that was the neatest thing I'd ever watched in my whole life at that time. And now I'm overhauling them. So it's been kind of neat.
And Dad, he's 91.
He's 91 and still as ornery as ever, and still active, and still comes up and helps us. If you noticed, he was standing behind me when we were running that engine on Tesla the other night.
I did see that. Would it be possible to run that video one more time? Now that we have developed a little bit of the background, we're watching our production folks back there scramble, and he's asking us to do what now? Can't do that. But this is we're here to enjoy aviation, and to actually. Oh, there we go. We're going again. This is before the start. There. Now, explain to us why every now and then you'll see a little flame pop out of the stack.
Well, on the test cell, we're running straight pipes. So each of those pipes just come back about a foot and are curled out to get away from the mount. So that's the engine as it fires, and the firing order of a Radial, it skips each cylinder. So it starts out on the top at number 1. There's my dad, 91. He drove himself up to 65 miles from Zepheyr Hills to Ocala this evening. And like I say, the firing order alternates, so you can see the exhaust going around.
Richard, will you ever have an even numbered Radial engine?
They wouldn't run if they were even numbered. And yeah, I always heard that the man who figured out the cam timing basically drove him nuts doing the mathematics on it. And I think it would be right.
And tell us what a master rod is.
The radial engines, what's unique about a radial engine is that if you notice, they're round. And it has a crankshaft in it with a 1-pin throw on it. And it has what they call a master rod, which attaches to that. And that's usually on position number 5 on 985s. And then the other rods are articulated onto that one rod. So as it goes around, that rod just oscillates, and it runs them all up and down every time it rotates. And 2 revolutions, every cylinder is fired.
And actually, if folks are recording this, they can actually go back and see some of those photographs of actually what you just described in a picture form, because pictures tell literally thousands of words. But the Radial engine is, I think, it's a masterpiece, and they work fine. They last a long time. What can go wrong with a Radial engine?
It's amazing what can go wrong, and they still run great. I've been waiting my whole life to have a customer come in and tell me that his engine was running bad, because they all run great right up till they quit, no matter what. It's kind of a side joke with it, but on the other hand, it's amazing what can happen. You can actually have a cylinder blow off and it'll still run. You can have all kinds of failures occur to it and it'll still run to get you to the ground. They're probably, the 985 series is going to go down in history like the DC-3 did as being the world's safest airplane. It's probably the best engine ever built.
And you're not saying that because you're partial?
I am partial to them because of that, though. It's what I have on my own airplane as well.
When you mentioned Radial engine, what's the difference between, and I know you're not a rotary specialist, but you know the difference between a radial and a rotary engine. Because some of the aircraft, actually the cylinders rotate around the crankshaft.
Correct.
And whereas in this case, we have a crankshaft that operates inside and around inside the cylinders that are stationary.
Yeah. Mostly what you're describing were like World War I engines used on the Lerone radials. I think they called it a genome. And they were used on like the Spads, I think it was. Really, really cool things. Lots of gyroscopic precession over that whole thing spinning.
Gyroscopic precession. Now that's something that I think some of our young viewers, even maybe some of our old viewers, may not be aware of. Is what are the dynamics of this big mass of steel and aluminum and iron and all sorts of things flailing around in front of you?
Well, it's everything is rotating mass is like a big flywheel. And anytime you try to change that, it's like playing with a little gyroscope when you were a kid. It's the same thing, only more. when a propeller is rotating, between the gyroscopic effect on it and the effect of the gravity of it, that blade could weigh 30 to 50,000 pounds of force trying to pull it apart.
And Procession, I notice you're also a helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
And with that, there's a whole lot of science involved in this. And as far as the gyroscopic precession, if you can imagine taking a bicycle wheel and holding the axle, spinning it real fast, and if you pull this way, it goes that way.
Exactly.
Why?
That's the physics of it that I don't even totally understand, but it's part of it. It's like in a helicopter, you put input into it 90 degrees before you want it to move.
Yeah. We're really trying to drop the seed to get the young folks in, and this is something that, again, Michael, we talked about this back as getting young people involved with this industry. You got, little Timmy and little Jackie that are watching, wanting to know, what can I do to get involved? How do we get involved with your repair station? I mean, I know you have a website. Few people are ever aware of Porter's Radials.
Yeah, right now I don't have an actual WW website, but I do have a Facebook site called Porter's Radials LLC, and we're also going to be working on a website very soon. But as far as getting involved right now, because of the COVID thing, we haven't done as much as we'd like to do, but we are open to it. If people just want to contact us, we're glad, like I said, to have them come out anytime.
Well, I'm going to take the liberty of turning that around, and if the guys are scrambling back into production, they're scrambling. Oh no, he's not going to do this to us again. What do we do? What do we do? You might be able to zoom in on that, and as we kind of talk in the background.
Yeah.
I want to get back to your compliance manager as these guys try to figure out how to get in on that cup in front of you. Okay. Oh, Bob's on it. Bob's on it. There we go.
There you go.
But that's the only thing that we can do is give you a plug, and we would like to give you that plug for all your efforts of staying in this business. And again, I keep going back to Michael being your compliance manager. That's a big role. I don't think
it totally is. Without Michael, we could not have become a repair station. I could not have spent the time it took to do it. And still build engines at the same time. It would have been impossible. I jokingly refer to it as he speaks Fed real well.
And Federalese is a very unique language.
It is, and I've had a great experience with them, and I've run a repair station most of my life. We started in Zepheyr Hills with Zepheyr aircraft engines, and I've had no problem with it. Never had a complaint. Never had a problem, and I'm very proud of that. But a good rapport with the FAA is very important.
And we used to say this tongue-in-cheek back when OB and I were inspectors, but we're with the FAA. We're here to help you. And see,
yeah,
it's
the oldest joke. It's the oldest joke in aviation.
But it's actually true. They are there actually to help you navigate your way through. And this is, if you just tell the truth with the FAA, you'll be fine. But the folks that are afraid and to get check-right-itis and actually certified-itis, of afraid that maybe they're going to ask a question that you don't know the answer. Well, you're not required to know every answer.
No.
You're required to know where to find it.
Exactly. Resource control. Michael, if we're going to pull these folks into this business, you speak Federalese, and there's a knack to that. What can you share with our viewing audience here all over the world? Over 85,000 we know are watching right now. So share with them some of the litmus paper tests that you use to keep you on track when you're dealing with the FAA and the federal government. Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, that is opening up the opportunities to the youth of today. The opportunities in an engine repair station is not only just for boys, it's open up for girls, young women, as well as young men. it's an equal opportunity position. And there's no real heavy lifting required. Everything is done with machinery and technology and hoist and lifts. So you don't have to be physically strong to do this. You just have to have the want to. And it is open, and there are a lot of women, more and more every day and every year, that are joining the profession, which is a good thing for the future of aviation.
Michael, I don't know if you've noticed it, but do you have trouble getting your meat hook? See that meat hook there? It's hard to get that into an inspection panel. I sometimes have to have Melody come in because she has nice petite little arms, and she can get her arms into places that I couldn't dream of. I'd have to go and get my tin snips,
especially
to
a
make
fuel
the hole
tank.
bigger. Oh, a fuel tank's classic.
Especially a fuel tank. And it doesn't have to be on general aviation aircraft, even on corporate aircraft or on commercial transport category aircraft. Those access panels aren't built for people like us. They're built for small,
Petite framed?
small-sized individuals. And now with all the OSHA safety equipment and all that, you're guaranteed, your safety is pretty much guaranteed. So it's not a hazardous job as it was 30, 40 years ago when we were young. So not only is it open to everybody, the safety factor of all of this is greatly improved over the years, partially through the FAA. And so there's a lot of opportunity because, as we sit here, and you mentioned earlier, we ain't young anymore. And we need to be able to demonstrate to the youth of today, not only in America, what your opportunities are in aviation, what kind of a career you can have. I totally enjoyed mine. I have no regrets about it. And it goes back to the old saying, if you're happy at what you do, you're never going to work a day.
Well, you're not done, are you? You're not finished.
No.
Okay.
I'm still part-time in it, but it's not bad.
You just mentioned something, we talk about safety, and in the old days, it was really easy to get hurt around some of this equipment. Now you've got to work kind of hard to get hurt because there's an awful lot
You
that
definitely
we learn
have to
about.
do something wrong that's not laid out in the plans, process, and procedures to get hurt.
Gentlemen, as we kind of wrap this up, and we are here again for safety, the purpose of this show is to kind of pull out and explain to the folks the importance of aviation safety, particularly in maintenance for plane time. But as we kind of wrap it up, Richard, leave us with a parting thought, just a quick parting thought.
Quick parting thought?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I can go back to your notes here and say provide opportunities for the next generation.
Yeah, well, that's, like I say, that's what we're trying to work on ourselves. And no matter what your interest is, I think quick advice to anybody who's interested in becoming a mechanic is find your niche, find your specialty. Doesn't have to be doing radial engines, but there's something for everybody involved in it. Just figure out what it is. And like I say, you'll love what you do every day.
Great. Well, gentlemen, I would like to thank you so much. Michael, I'm going to reach across you. Richard, thanks so much for joining us here. We're going to wrap this one up, and I tell you what, you're looking at legends here. So this is Ben Coleman. We're going to wrap up this portion, and we're going to do a hot set change for our next guest. And we want to welcome you to go on that Facebook site for Porter Radials, or however you want to read. There's even a phone number that Bob Nacero gave to you there on the screen. We're going to wrap this one up, and we'll talk to you later.